everybody, it is Melanie Mitro and Katy Ersta, and we are the hosts of the Make Chic Happen podcast.
And this podcast is for you, friend. We're going to dive into the skills, mindset, and systems you need to build a successful social media presence, and it supports your business goals.
All right, and I am Melanie Mitro, one of the co-hosts, and I have left my full-time career in early intervention to be a stay-at-home mom, and I'm seriously craving something more.
All right, and I'm Katy. I am a stage 4 cancer survivor. I absolutely love all things storytelling, and I was a teacher who truly just wanted to get the groceries paid for. Never in a million years did I see what would happen with this business.
Oh my gosh, and here we are, 10 years later, and we have built multi-million-dollar businesses from our laptop, from our kitchen tables, basically anywhere that you have Wi-Fi. And the cool part is now we get to teach other people how to do the same.
So just 2 female entrepreneurs who are wives, moms, and we're also besties who want to take you on the journey right alongside us to help you build a business that you love and a life that you desire.
All right, so come on in, check out today's episode. Hey everybody, it is Melanie and Katy, the host of the Make Chic Happen podcast. And today, I say this every time we do a podcast episode, it's a really exciting episode, but we have been working behind the scenes for months now on updating, which we just announced at the time that this episode is going live. We just announced that the new planner is coming and it will be out on the 27th. So all of that information is coming. But today, we're going to actually dive into one of the principles that Katy really developed that we've taught and that we teach in our course that is part of the planner. And it was the 4-hash method, right? And I said was because we've given it a facelift and we've really made it a little more user-friendly because we found that people were just having a really hard time understanding my 4-hash and people were really comparing that to their hashtags. And when we look at your social media content, we look at your strategy, we want you to have like 4 areas that you speak about consistently in your social media. But when we called it 4-hash, we found that people were thinking, oh, what are my hashtags that I have to use? So we gave it a facelift.
We did.
We redesigned it a little bit in a beautiful way, and we're going to talk about it. And it's called the Thumbprint Method. So I'm going to kind of toss it to you and tell the story about how did the thumbprint, how did that come to be? Why did you name it that?
Right.
What was your vision behind it?
I love it because it was accidental. It was one of those things where we were actually training, I believe it was a community or it was one of our private clients. I can't remember exactly where it was, but she was struggling through 4-hash. She was really thinking about like it as hashtags. She was thinking about, I don't know, 4 things that make me unique. And so we talked about what made her unique and how she did business a little bit differently. But then out of nowhere, I thought about this bakery by my mom's house. And I remember every time I would go to my mom's house, I would stop at this bakery. And when I went into this bakery, I went for one reason and one reason only. And that was because they literally had the best thumbprint cookies. I mean, these things were so good. They were a little shortbread cookie with like a dollop of buttercream frosting, but it was the perfect level of sweetness. And they were so good, a little bit light, but they were still sweet enough that it kind of like, you just savored it, right? You really enjoyed that cookie. And so I would go to the bakery for that reason only, just to enjoy the thumbprint cookie. And then sometimes when I was in the bakery, I would grab, a blueberry scone or a bear claw or something else that was really delectable or enjoyable that I enjoyed. But my primary reason for going into the bakery was always for the thumbprint cookie. It just so happened that on one occasion when I went to that said bakery, I went in and you know how when bakeries, you look at bakeries and there's this, the window display of all of the pastries that you get. So I was in the bakery and I was looking for the thumbprint cookies and couldn't find them. Figured they were just still behind the counter somewhere that I just couldn't see. So I asked and they said, we just no longer sell those cookies. And I thought, well, that's stinks.
Yeah.
And I thought something else. I was like, oh crap. I really enjoyed that. What a bummer. But I grabbed a couple other things that I enjoy, but I don't love. But I didn't go back to the bakery because they no longer served what I had originally come for. And our social media as marketers works the same exact way. We often make the mistake of thinking that social media is about us as the business owner. It's actually not. Social media is about how we serve others, what reason we give them to come back. So we have these thumbprints in our media that give people a reason to come back into the store, to purchase the products, to cultivate, to be part of a community in some way. And if we no longer serve those staple thumbprints, those reasons that people really come in, they're no longer going to come into the bakery. They're no longer going to come into our social media space. And the reason that the thumbprint method is effective is because it reminds us that if we talk about too many things, if we try to do a bunch of things kind of good, we never really do things really, really well, and we don't become known for something.
Right.
And it doesn't necessarily mean that something is what we sell, but it complements what we do too. So we're actually going to break it down for you today. We're going to talk a little bit about how you can actually build out your thumbprint method. And so if you are familiar with the 4 hash, this might just be a different way of looking at it. It's the same philosophy, but it's just revamped. It's clarified to help you understand how you serve people more effectively and how to continue to give them the thumbprint that they come for.
Yeah. Okay. So what I want you to be thinking right now is, all right, I need to be thinking in terms of what are the things that in my business or in my life that I want to be known for? And we kind of break it down into different categories, right? And so we're going to talk about four areas today, and they're very specific. So it gives you a little more guidance and a little more boundaries. I almost think of it like as bumpers when you're bowling, like this just kind of keeps you in your lane. So the first one, right? And we've actually within the planner, well, I'm just going to say it because I'm excited about it too, because
it is really exciting what
it is. It's color coded. So it also gives you kind of that visual too. So I want you to think about, okay, one of your colors, right? One of your areas is really your stance on your business, right? So let's talk about that. Like, what does it mean to have a stance on your business, and why is that important?
So your business is why you do what you do. So whether you own a shop that people actually go into, a storefront or a bakery, or you are in the direct sales space, you have a stance on why you do what you do. Now, this could mean that you as a business owner, you actually thrive on cultivating a community, and you want people to feel that being a part of your business in some way, they are served well because of the community that you create. Likewise, if you're a chiropractor and you think about, well, what's my stance on business? Well, if you're a chiropractor, do you believe in just the holistic approach to healing? Or are you a chiropractor who doesn't necessarily take the traditional look of chiropractic the practice of actually creating the crack, and you're just like adjusting in different ways? Do you have different services available, or do you only keep it traditional to chiropractic services? Likewise, if you're in the direct sales space, why would someone be interested in joining your team? What does that feel like? How would they be served by being a member of your organization? Would you be an upline who actually supports them by getting on the phone with them every week and consulting one-on-one with them? Do you create a really large organization where trainings are done together? Do you create a community in some way? And so you want to ask yourself, what is my stance on business? Why did I go into business to begin with? And then how do I want to serve people in the business as well?
Yeah. And I think that is, so people forget that. They're like, what? I'm just like, they start to think that they're like everybody else. But if you even just look at Katy and I, the way we mentor, we were mentoring a client this week, and we were talking about how we motivate our team, right? And I'm over here talking about, gifts and swag and things that I give. And you were like, oh, we did, it was, what was it? It was you gave the meal, every life matters, or what was it? I can't remember.
It was Every Meal Matters, I think is what we called it. But we actually did a number of meals based based on the goals that were hit, Mike and I donated a number of meals to a nonprofit.
That's right. Yep.
And then also too, even with that regard, I remember you and another girl in your organization being night and day, where you did a lot of systems and you talked about training and strategy. She was like, let's have a party. Yeah. And everything had to be fun and uplifted. And if you got to training, you kind of did. But if not, we were just going to make even the process of inviting had to be fun.
Yep.
And that worked really well because that was her stance on how she did business.
Yep.
And you and I have talked too, even the reason that we gave the chiropractic example is there's a chiropractor every few miles down the street, right? But we noticed that their stance on doing business was different because it had to do with their approach, their belief, their reason, and the feel that they wanted to create for somebody coming in.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think you have to think about that, because obviously you're using your social media to promote your service, your business, and you have to make it stand out. So that vision, those core values have to come through in all that you do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So the second one, so that's the first one, and you always list out what your stance is, and then subtopics underneath really drive your content.
Correct.
Right. The second one is your products and services that you offer. So it's really your stance on that. So let's talk a little bit about what that means. So how is that different for each person?
Well, people have to know you're open for business.
Yeah.
I feel as though a lot of times people actually either they hide behind the product and they lead only with the product, or they don't talk about the product or the service they offer at all, and people don't even know that they're actually open for business. And maybe right now, as you're listening to this podcast or as you're watching us, you're like, oh, I'm so guilty of either A or B. But the second part of the equation is really just understanding that your products and your services are how you serve people. So talking about your products, talking about the service, talking about what those things can do for somebody else. And this is a really great way to share testimonials. This is a really great space for you to talk about how the products or the service or even the experience has impacted your own life in some way. Talking about if you own a brick and mortar store, I always think of Emma Jane Shop, the things that people are going to see within your storefront.
Yeah.
If there's specials, if there's deals, you have to talk about your business, because if people don't know that your business is open, they're not going to know to come to the store.
Yeah.
Likewise, we do talk a lot about storytelling. It's something that we talk about in the community. It's something that we train on. It's something that we really, really love. It isn't about what you sell. It is about how selling that product can make an impact in somebody's life.
Yeah.
And even the other day when we were training one of our business clients, and she's getting ready to launch her business, we talked about the fact that your story is what connects people. And so there's the product, there's your story, and then there's the connection that you create so that people will be more excited to purchase because they see the hope or they see the possibility or they see what that product or service could mean in their own life.
Yeah. And I was doing a one-on-one yesterday with one of our branding intensive clients, and we were talking about, she's in the wellness industry, and we were talking about, okay, why do you run wellness groups? Like, what is your unique stance on what you do? And she started to share, she's like, I'm whole food and plant-based. And I was like, okay, but why are you like that? And so we started to talk about, and she was like, well, traditional diets don't work for me. The whole high fat, low carb. And I was like, okay, well, what do you believe in? She started to talk about, like, I don't believe in, I believe in ratios and the ratios of your plate. And I believe you should eat higher carbs and lower fat. And I was like, really? And so then she was like, yeah, you should eat things that can be grown in the garden, that can be picked off of trees, things that you would put in, that if you were going to live off of the land, that would be what you eat. And I was like, well, why is that your stance? And so we started to talk about the reason why she, adopted that way of thinking. And I was like, that's your stance. When people come into your wellness community, which there are hundreds of wellness communities out there, you're going to talk about food because you love food. You're going to talk about whole food and plant-based, why that's important. You're going to teach your ratio method, and you're going to talk about the problems it solved for you and how that's going to do for others. even though there are 300,000 other wellness coaches
Probably
out
even
there.
more than that.
Yeah, but
yeah.
she was able to pinpoint, okay, this is the way I use the products, services, and experiences and put my unique spin on it, right?
Yes.
And fitness was a part of it, but it wasn't what she led with, where we know other wellness coaches who lead with fitness and sort of the nutrition's an afterthought.
Yeah.
So you can
So
really
many
begin
different
to
ways to do
see,
it.
yeah, so you really have to ask yourself, what's my stance? Why is that my stance? And you keep asking yourself why until you really get that unique and individualized experience.
I love it.
Okay, so let's go to the third one. So now we're into the last two. And so this is really your USP or your unique sharing proposition. So let's talk a little bit about what that is.
So first, we often hear of unique selling proposition.
Right.
And I actually hate that word. I hate the idea of selling because when you are creating a social space, you are cultivating a community. You are making people feel something. You're doing so much more than just selling. And so the USP is your unique sharing proposition because it's how you share a part of who you are with people who are potentially interested in the products, service, or the experience that you're going to provide. And so a USP it should be fun. A USP is really what makes you unique. It's really what you're interested in. It's what you talk about very organically. It's the things that your friends and family know you for. It's just the part of your personality that is oftentimes it takes a back seat to trying to sell a product. But what I actually think needs to happen is it needs to take the front seat. It actually needs to take the driver's seat. And the reason is because when there is a organic and natural way to speak about the things that you love and that you care about, that lead, that staple thumbprint, that reason why people come into the bakery is the same reason that they're more likely to stay in the bakery and shop around and see what other things are in the bakery that you can serve them with, right? So it's like, remember when I said at the very beginning of this podcast, I mentioned when I came in for the thumbprint, I enjoyed the thumbprint, I love the thumbprint, I'm going to grab a blueberry scone or a muffin or a bear claw. The bear claws are so good too. So I'm going to do those things because I came in for the thumbprint. Right. So for example, and we'll share yours, we'll share mine. Both Melanie and I, we were in the same direct sales space.
Yep.
Both had incredible success with the sales space. Both did it very, very differently. And led differently
and
as well.
And we lived within a 10-mile radius.
10-mile radius, which is glorious. I mean, our husbands are like, you see her more than you see me.
For sure.
But we didn't really struggle with that idea of competition. And this is where I hope that this podcast really opens your eyes a little bit to why collaboration is so big and there's just so much abundance because of the USP.
Right.
So for example, if you go to my page, Katy Ersta, we'll make sure that we drop everything here as well. Yeah. And then show notes. If you go to Katy Ersta, you'll notice that I talk about cancer a lot. I talk about my life in remission. I talk about my stance on health because I've been through cancer. I talk about how to speak to cancer survivors. I talk about nonprofits that we donate to because of the impact that cancer has had on my life. I talk about pink washing. I talk about just being aware of the cues that your body is sending you that are so important. And it's something that I'm passionate about. You might be saying, okay, Katy, how does that relate to chic? It doesn't always. Yeah. The truth is, when I talk about cancer, I'm connecting with an audience. And then what we often see happen is people who followed me, came in, saw what I had to offer, saw my stance on cancer and what I think of it. They came in and they go, that's really interesting. I wonder what else she does. They came in for a thumbprint. They stayed for the bear claw. So they came in for a specific reason, and I gave them a reason to stay or to purchase because they felt like they were well served from the content that I very naturally want to speak about. Yeah. And I mean, you can tell even as we talk about this, I'm clearly passionate about speaking about it. It's very organic for me. Likewise with Melanie, do you want to talk about one of your USPs? I'll let you kind of do that.
Yeah. You know, and even for me, I love, and people would go, oh, you know, like I relate to Katy's story and I'm going to go follow her. I'm going to go check it out because, you relate to that part of what you've been through. It really builds this human connection, and then people get really curious. They're like, okay, well, what is this chic thing? And okay, I'm thinking about starting a business and I relate to her. She's the person that I trust. Where I'm just slightly different in my personality. When you come to my page, one of my USPs is going to be where I talk about my journey with my anti-inflammatory diet. And it really circles around the anxiety and the inflammation and the burnout that I've been through, the adrenal fatigue. And so you're going to come to my page and you're going to see me talk about my stance on wellness a little bit differently. It's going to be really about this healing, and food is very much like healing your body and helping you to relieve some of those symptoms. And I'm going to talk about the journey and self-care and self-care in a way that's like allowing your body the downtime it needs so that you can also show up as your best self. And so I'll talk a lot about that, but then I'll also talk about, being a business owner. And so people will come in because I'm talking about my anti-inflammatory journey, products I use, things that I've swapped out, and then they'll end up in my stories or on my posts, and they'll hear me talk about being a business owner. And so it'll end up becoming a business contact or just somebody that I've helped to change their lifestyle. You'll also see me talk about my fashion because I genuinely love shopping and I love sharing the products that I find and the clothes, and that brings me joy. And I literally do it just because I purely enjoy it also. So you can see it. We have a very different stance. We're both the owners of Chic Influencer, and we do it in a different way, right? So it attracts different kinds of people, right? But it serves the same purpose.
Right.
It's making sure that we're authentically connecting with people based on the things that we love outside of what we sell.
Yeah. And so that third section that we talked about, that actually happens twice. So as a business owner, you have really your stance on business. You have your stance on the products and services you provide. You have your USP, and then you have one other USP. And that sort of is one that you care a lot about, that you like to talk about, but it's also just something that makes you a little bit unique. The reason, and I think that this is key, that we talk about a USP is you want to say something repeatedly. So if I had only told my cancer story one time and never spoke of it again, I wouldn't be building a community of other people who've been impacted by cancer, because why would they come back to the bakery if I wouldn't keep serving them the thumbprints?
Right.
So when you think about your USP, you want to think about compounding that conversation over time, consistently, over and over. And if you do sound like a broken record, you are doing it right. And of course, there's different ways to go about sharing content. You can do this through carousels, you can do it through Reels, IGTVs, lives. There's so many options. But the USP is really what the connector is. And so you do that 2 times throughout the week. You do that in 2 different USP areas throughout the week. And if you're sitting here going, well, I'm not quite sure what you mean by that, we have created a freemium, and we'll make sure that we do share that freemium in the show notes. But in the planner, we spent a lot of time creating tutorials on how to actually use the Thumbprint method as well.
Yeah, and the thing is when you're looking at the planner, when you're looking at the freemium that we've created, you can see the different colors, and this helps you plan your content. You can say, okay, I need to make sure I've hit business content, my products and service, the way I do it differently, my 2 USPs. And if you look at that and you notice like you haven't hit one of those areas and it's been over a week, you're like, oh, I might be losing followers because I served them content about my anti-inflammatory journey and then I stopped talking about it for a week and a half.
See that happen a lot.
And then people don't engage with you. And so this visual allows you just to remember that rotation. It keeps you multidimensional and really helps you create a very unique brand. And so that freemium is just a great way for you to begin to understand. We actually created a video that walks you through how to use the Thumbprint method. And then also it is a part of the Make Chic Happen planner as well.
So much good stuff.
I know, so much. And we could probably talk about this for hours. But one final thing. We've talked a lot about the fact that the planner is coming out. And so we've announced it on social. And so you guys will put in the show notes too. If you want to be the first to know, if you want the update in your inbox or through a text message. We'll actually link it in the show notes. You can actually put your name, your email, your phone number, and you will be the first to know when the updated edition of the Make Chic Happen Planner is live. Yes. All right, you guys. So today was an awesome episode on the Thumbprint Method. I'm sure you've got more questions, but stay tuned because we will be bringing you more. If you love today's episode, make sure you take a screenshot, tag us over at the Make Chic Happen podcast. You can tag both of us at Melanie Mitro, at Katy_Ursta. We want to hear from you. Share it out there with the world. Thanks for hanging out with us today, and we'll see you back here for the next episode. All right, so if you loved today's episode, make sure you head over to wherever you listened to the episode today and leave us a rating and review. And also, take a little screenshot and tag us on Chic Influencer. We'll feature you in our stories. Plus, we'd love to get your feedback and hear from our listeners.
Until next week, let's make chic happen.